We are here, the blues band, Stephen Downes and Teemu Arina at the Surf Education Days 2007, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what has been your reaction on the conference so far?
Well, I've enjoyed it. There's, I think people were a bit surprised at my talk yesterday, and today I finally got to see someone from Chaos Pilots. I've known about Chaos Pilots for a long time, and so was interested to see that. And of course, I saw your talk as well, which I enjoyed, and that's been my conference.
Oh. So you took a bit interesting spin on your talk. You were criticizing a paper. I think the guy was here at the conference as well, whose paper it was.
He's here now. I'm told he wasn't here yesterday. He was too busy, I guess, to come, is what I'm told. So, which is fine. I mean, well, we have the video, so...
so you can get the correspondence afterwards. So I wonder, I definitely enjoyed your presentation. It was very well contradicting the sort of traditional point of view and how actually it is a bit false if you think in terms of what we understand from research so far nowadays. So the unguided teaching or learning. What was the point of the paper?
Of his paper?
Yeah.
Oh, well, his paper basically was arguing that the research doesn't support what they called unguided learning. And unguided learning was supposed to include everything from discovery learning to inquiry learning to problem-based learning to constructivism. And the way they tried to do it a couple of ways. The main argument was based on cognitive theory, and in particular the relationship between long-term and short-term memory. And essentially what they argued was that in unguided learning, because a person is attempting to choose the frame of reference or the hypothesis that describes a situation, they're occupying their short-term memory with tasks that are not related to learning, right? But if they're being given instructions, this frame has been chosen for them, and so their short-term memory is entirely focused to learning. And because it's entirely focused to learning, you can maximize the amount of information that is stored, they say, in long-term memory. That was their argument in a nutshell.
Yeah, so they probably try to create some certain of mental models. By the way, the word mental model is quite interesting. Dave Snowden, in some of his talks, he pointed out that actually we don't have mental models. It was a nice way of explaining why we are different in the 70s. That we have different mental models.
Right.
But in fact, we have fragmented pieces of knowledge and networks that are changing all the time when we use them. So there is no model other than the network model, which is constantly morphing into something else. What do you think of this sort of false statements and simplifications like mental models or, say, personal mastery or even long-term and short-term memory and business?
Well, yeah, the language influences how we think of these things, right? And a lot of people have this almost computer-esque picture of the way the mind works, right? And that's why, even in the paper they're talking about, the huge database of information, and then they're talking about schemata as well. And these are all forms of linguistic representation. I've talked about that elsewhere, about forms of linguistic representation. And, this is a theory. It does, as you say, have a history. I remember in university reading an awful lot of Jerry Fodor and Zenon Polishin and all of these guys about internal mental representations in the language of thought and that sort of thing. So there is a history behind it, and it does seem to mesh well with a lot of the computational theory that we have today. And we do know that there is a short-term and a long-term memory. I mean, that's not made up. I mean, we do know that exists. But the way that these things are described is suggesting an incorrect picture. We don't have sentences in the brain. We don't have models, and a model properly so called is a set of statements, a set of propositions, a set of condition-action rules. We don't have those in the brain. That's not the way we store information. It's not the way we represent the world. And as I pointed out yesterday, when we're trying to recognize or trying to determine what to do or what the correct response is in an information-rich environment. We don't do some sort of information search through a database. It is, as I described, it's a process of recognition.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you can see that that's true. You can see that it's true because you can have experts who know a discipline very well as compared to novices who don't know a discipline very well. They know the same facts, but the expert really knows it well. It's the Dreyfus picture of the expert knowledge as being almost intuitive, and that's why I describe it as a process of recognition. You recognize the environment for what it is, and this recognition goes right into the actual perception of the thing. That's why I meant to talk about Gibson yesterday in direct perception. I didn't because I forgot. but you can almost go that far. But when you see orange and black stripy thing coming at you out of the forest, right? You don't search your mind. Lion? Nope. Zebra? Nope. Rhinoceros? Nope. Tiger?
You're not scanning a predator against some kind of catalog. You
just go tiger. You recognize it right away.
Just run away. Then you analyze the situation afterwards. So learning is not remembering symbols. Learning is recognition.
Learning is recognition. Knowledge is recognition. Knowledge is having a certain mental state, a certain configuration of neural connections that correspond. Do I want to say corresponds? No, I don't. Not technically, but you know what I mean. That is associated with, is the more precise way of saying it, a perceptual phenomena, such that if you're presented with a perceptual phenomena, that network is activated. That's what knowledge is. Learning is acquiring that neural state. Learning is growing, and we talked about this, growing that neural configuration in your mind. And the way to do that is to be presented with tigers. If somebody talks to you about tigers, you're not going to grow that neural configuration. You have to see tigers to recognize tigers. It's the only way to do it, really.
So here we are in a very unguided learning situation. We have a camera here, we are talking to it, and probably other people are thinking we are totally nuts or something, talking to an apparatus like this. But in fact, when we are sharing this, it will be seen by
dozens of people.
Dozens of people, and we never know what the reactions can be. So a local conversation like this can go global. But I think learning opportunities are everywhere. You don't have to go to a classroom. Even in this cafe, there is a learning opportunity. What kind of learning opportunities you recognize here?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. I'm looking at the trees right off the bat and wondering what sort of trees they are. First thing I would ask is, are they real trees? And they appear to be. I'm trying to get a picture of these trees here. They look, they look like fig trees, but I'm not sure. To me, they're very European. So, I've commented before in the past that anytime I travel, it's an ongoing process of inference, trying to figure out, we're in a cafeteria and I was trying to figure out what the food is earlier, so I actually had to ask out earlier this morning, is this cream cheese? I went to buy milk for my coffee 2 days ago, and so I went to the grocery store, and I did not take advantage of that as a learning opportunity, and I just picked milk, and I bought sour milk. They sell sour milk here.
For me, it's very interesting to travel, because every time you're in a new country, it sort of occurs to you that you can't expect that everything is like you expect them to be at home. So you have to be alert all the time to really recognize what is different. So your pattern recognition engine, you could say, it goes really on overdrive when you are in a completely different country. So I'm wondering why people are not, just deciding to travel all the time. Is it useful to be sort of feeling connection in the environment where you are in a way that it gets automated, your way of living and relating with the environment, or would it be useful to just travel, aimlessly?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's often commented that you learn more about your home when you leave it. And certainly Canadians who've gone to other countries around the world and come back home, they say, now I know about Canada because I've seen these other countries, and these things we take for granted at home just aren't there in these other countries. And there's the whole thing about diversity of experience, right? You get, I think, a better understanding of the world the more diverse your understanding of it is, or the more diverse your experience of it is. Yes. And I'm sure there's a mathematics for that, but because if you're trying to get at what is essential in the world, what I don't want to say underlying realities, but the underlying realities, the best way is to get a large number of divergent phenomena, and then whatever does unite them comes out in that experience.
Yes. So we're looking for different points of view for the very similar concepts. It's like a hologram, knowledge is like a hologram, depends on from which position you are looking at it, and it always looks a bit different, but it's a bit the same. But and you understand it only when you see it from a different direction and start to understand as a whole. Like you said, when you leave Canada, you get a completely different point of view. What is your own home and your country when you see how it could be different? Right.
Well, that's it exactly. I mean, there's something to be said, for having a home, having a place that's relaxing, that's comfortable. I live in my home in Moncton. I work in a forest practically. I look outside my window. I see trees. I see deer. I like that. It's warm. It's comfortable. Diversity is just one thing, right? It's one thing among a range of things. And, being able to have things to hold on to and to say, that are familiar, I think is a good thing too. It gives you a base of reference. It gives you an identity. I think if you're always traveling around the world, you might feel of the world, but not everybody wants to feel of the world. I'm just speculating out loud here, of course. But
Just to jump to a totally different topic, oftentimes when I go to these kind of conferences, this is a professional conference anyway for educationalists and vendors and others, is that when you drop important names like Seymour Papert or Paul Freire or Ivan Illich or even someone like Frederick Taylor or someone like Marshall McLuhan, a media researcher I said today. If there is one hand who knows it, you can already clap your hands, because it's kind of sad how historyless oftentimes it is the environment in which we live. All of these things repeat. There are these great thinkers have been before us, and just people are ignorant to history, and they are just looking at this new technology as the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well, I mean, certainly my education is in philosophy, and if there's one thing philosophy teaches you, it's the history of ideas. And the lesson that history has impressed on me most of all is even the greatest thinkers, how small their advance actually is. And I think people need to be able to see what's happening today in that context. You're right. I mean, and I think every generation sees something, it's big, it's shiny, it's new, it's creative, it's innovative, it's something they've never seen before. And that's why people get all excited about these technologies. But if you see it from the longer view, then you see that it is a certain, not inevitable, but a certain progression of building on the things that have come before. And it's good to know the things before. But, the other side, nobody can know everything. This is just it. I mean, like, how can you?
This one thing also to observe here in many of these conferences is one paradox, which is that everyone is talking about new technology, but the venue, it's like the same venue 50 years ago. It's just the presentation technique has changed from what is this projection. We have digital projectors today. Sure. In the past, we had boards or something.
Yeah.
So what do you see here as how could we implement technology in ways that would improve the process here?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, because what we have here is a convention. We have a gathering of people. And insofar as we have presentations, one person speaking, there's a limited amount of things that we can do. I've thought about this lots because I've done lots of different presentations. I've done things like at the 2 things I did in California just recently. I had the back channel up where people could type in their comments in their own web browsers and they would show up on the screen. That worked okay. It was really distracting, but it was a lot of fun to try. I've tried more interesting slide presentations and not so much animations, but even just the photos and the colored text and that. And that's good, but it takes a long time and a lot of work to prepare these.
Yeah.
And you lose some of the spontaneity. My talk yesterday, you notice my slides were really dull. And the reason for that was I woke up that morning, I typed my slides, I typed my talk, I got up, I had a coffee, I went and I gave my talk. That was how I did my talk. And and everybody's sort of asking, well, when did you plan this? Did you plan this? Why did you pick this topic? And the reason why I picked the topic is that's what was on my mind that morning.
Yeah.
So I think, everybody likes to do animations and slideshows and things like that, but I think presentation tools and even just ways of interacting and connecting that capture the spontaneity of the moment, that's going to be the best way to move forward, to try to catch this dynamism. We like conversations. I know I'm talking a lot, but that's because there's a camera here. And camera changes the conversation.
Yeah. Camera spoils all the fun.
Yeah, but if we can just. But the reason why this is kind of neat is just because it's like just off the top of the head. And you really get. At least my own experience is you really get to know what the heart, the core, the concrete essence of a concept is when you have to talk about it just off the top of your head. Do you know it or do you not know it? What do you really think it is? That's when that is like when you ask me, what was Kirshner, Weller, and Clark's paper, right? Well, it's one of these. Moments of truth. Do I really know this paper, or was I faking it? Well, you find out when you ask a question like that, and it's just dynamic and loose, and and then and that's when too the most genuine criticisms come. What really was the problem, as opposed to this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, that's you talk about pictures and giving presentation. For me, when I use pictures, I've seen that I get quite good at finding good pictures very quickly and sort of coming up with an abstract idea of what I'm going to talk about. But the slides don't contain that many words, which enables me to reflect when I see the image in a completely new way. And oftentimes when I give presentations, I see that I also finalize the presentation, just a few minutes before I'm going on stage. And it's still not, my ideas are still moving forward, so I just change them during my talk as well. And the nightmare scenario would be that I would be in a conference and I have to submit a paper a year before, and then I have to send my slides 1 month before.
Right.
And then I would walk on the stage and say that everything I've said, I don't necessarily agree with myself. And everything that is on the slides on your paper right now, I'm not just going to use them. I have totally different ideas in my mind. It just sort of disappoints the audience in a sense.
Well, yeah, I've walked onto a stage and said, well, this title that I had to give 6 months ago doesn't really apply anymore. And they sort of look at me, well, why did you? Anyhow, but that's the nature of it. I remember my very first philosophy paper that I delivered at a conference, and I went to a room, and it was one of these little breakout rooms, and I got up, and there were 8 people in the audience, and I read my paper. And because that's what you did. You'd go to your conference, you'd read your paper. It was like an author doing a reading. And then there were 1 or 2 polite questions, and that was it. And I would have a very hard time doing it now. I did do it once. The Bunteen Oration in Perth, they actually asked me to write the paper out as text. So the night before the talk, it was an early morning talk, so the night before the talk I wrote my paper, and it was a very strange thing, because I'd write the paper, I'd write a few paragraphs, and then I'd read the paragraphs aloud and time myself, because of course they only had a certain amount of time. Yeah. So that's why the sections in that paper is like 3 minutes, 6 minutes. That's the chapter headings is the amount of time it was supposed to take, and it was a very odd way to write. It was really hard, and I don't like it because it created a very good paper. But to try to do that every time, I think would be a bit much.
Often when I make my own papers, if someone asks me to write something, it's not the first version which I'm going to submit. It has a lot of thinking going on when I write, so the paper has the first version is the most important one for me, because it has all the nice ideas, but then I have to, it's also a bit quite hard to understand for someone else, because I'm not having the introduction and general discussion and conclusions and all those. I'm just playing around with the gems.
Right.
So that's also quite sad how little information actually is transmitted. New ideas is transmitted in papers that are submitted to conferences.
Yeah, well, in general, I'm not happy with the state of papers in conferences, or in journals for that matter. You get a few standout papers here and there, but you're right, most of them contain very little information. You say the first version is the most important version. For me, usually the first version is the only version. One of the things that I was very lucky was when I was in university, I spent 6 years working on the student newspaper, and that teaches you how to write the first draft and the final draft at the very same time, because you only have time to write one draft. You're writing for a deadline. You need 500 words in 45 minutes, and 30,000 people are going to read them.
Aren't those the sort of learning skills that are not taught? Those sort of things that you observe from your own behavior, like how I'm doing my presentations, how I find images and how I connect my ideas with metaphors. It's not taught anywhere, and that's a really important skill of communicating your ideas clearly to other people. But anyway, Stephen, why don't you maybe ask me? I'm all the time asking you questions, and you're talking, so we are both here behind the camera. So
okay. What do you think you'll be doing when you're my age? Okay, I'm twice your age. Okay, and so you've built your business and all of that. So what will you be doing in 20 years' time, 25 years' time? Can you picture that?
When I was in school, I had much clearer vision what I'm going to be in half of my age back then. But when I got into this complex environment in which I'm interacting with whatever I see, the less important it became for me thinking where I'm going to be when I'm twice of my age. Probably I would go really deep into these ideas and things that I'm looking at right now, learning, knowledge management, organizations, industrial production, whatever. But for me, that would also be a bit sad future, because it means that I'm clearly defining myself in a certain expert area, and where people are calling me, they're always calling for the same reasons.
Right.
So in a sense, I would like to shift a bit of my own thinking, but it's a bit hard. But that's... my background in this company was that when I started it, I was a very good artist. I was very good at drawing things, doing pictures, images, graphic design. I was not a programmer or a philosopher or anything. I was just expressing my ideas on with images. So, but I learned programming, and I noticed that programming actually is almost like art. You have total freedom of how you're going to implement, and it's really creative process. Mm-hmm. And then I started teaching. And I noticed that it's the most effective way to learn for me was to actually trying to explain to others my ideas. So that might be why I'm giving these talks right now, because I enjoy it so much. sort of trying to express my ideas to others so that they maybe get inspired by those ideas. So it has been a really short but long learning experience for me, and I'm an information holic. You know, I'm reading too much and I'm collecting too much stuff. But I've taken your advice, which is that you should view information as a flow, and that's how I sometimes perceive it when a lot of stuff is coming at me. That it's okay.
Yeah. The Chaos Pilots thing that we both attended earlier on, they're saying you should evaluate your success not just in what you got and not just in what your client got, but also in what the world gets. So what is the world getting out of your work?
Yeah, well, I was thinking that when he also presented that I really connected with the ideas of what should you evaluate. It's like what's in it for me. If it's just getting a grade, that's not enough. So I want to sort of understand myself also through understanding the world around me. But for me in my business, the most important thing is that I see that what I do has value in what other people do. And if I can change the behavior of other people in a way that they come to me later and say that thank you, Teemu, and I see people on fire with things that I'm proposing that they try to start blogging or something, and then they come back to me later that was the best idea you've given to me.
Right.
You know, that feels very good for me. What the world gets, well, when I'm giving these talks, I just try to share it as widely as possible. I never know who is going to enjoy it, who is going to use it, who is going to get a lot of value out of it for himself. I'm not going to see that, but through this global mind sphere that the internet is creating, it's really wonderful to get someone from the other side of the globe, from a totally different field, contacting me and saying thank you.
Sure.
You know, for whatever reason. And I oftentimes see that when they come to me that this is what I got out of it, it's a totally new perspective that I never thought of. And that's really fuels my own.
What sort of
interest.
idea do you think, what sort of idea or concept do you think of yours should be spread through the world? Do you think there's anything that people should take away from you and say, this is the thing that I got from Teemu Arina that I can take home with me and grow from?
Well, I'm not selfish enough to think that way. But one thing would be probably just, my story. I'm 25. I started early on when I was 16 doing my own thing. And now I'm here. And many of these conferences, I'm oftentimes the youngest.
Right.
And sometimes, there are people who are 2 or 3 times older than me, and they don't view me as, someone who is less.
Right.
So that I can play a win-win situation with anyone, and they understand it, that anyone can be at any age valuable for others. And the sort of reverse mentoring in organization should be done in that way. If you have internships, young people coming to your company, put them to work with the manager. The manager might learn a thing or two from the young people, rather than putting some senior consultant explaining how things work around here. Just mix people who are not traditionally mixed. And I see a lot of fire and ideas and creativity in young people, and that is a potential that should be tapped. I think that if we are talking about collective intelligence in universities and school, I think the collective intelligence, the untapped potential is already there. Our students, they're sitting doing nothing. Yeah. They should be doing something when they are there. So I was really impressed by Chaos Pilot's approach. Yeah. Do something. That's the way to go.
It's a funny thing. I was noticing sports fans tend to be younger. I was wondering about that because you'd think, right? The longer you cheer for a sports team, And I've cheered for some sports team for like decades now. The more excited you get when they win, but it turns out to be the opposite. The people who've only cheered for a team 2 or 3 years, they're the ones who get all excited. And the old guys, you know, who have their season tickets, and you know, the team wins, and you know, it's funny.
They've seen it.
Yeah, seen it, been there. Yeah, I remember back when we won the championship in '85, and yeah, this is almost as good.
That's what I see sometimes when I'm talking with older people, is that they have seen so much.
Yeah.
That sometimes almost anything that you say to them is filtered through their earlier experiences that are many.
Yeah.
And it means that oftentimes they think that a lot of things are not new. You know, it's like driving a car. Mm-hmm. When you get used to it, you don't see a new sign.
Right. Yeah.
On the roadside, and sometimes that sign might be really useful to see.
Yeah, like stop.
Yeah, and young people who don't have these fixed conceptions of the world already, and might be sometimes very good at asking totally stupid questions that sort of wake up you from your dream
of doing the things that were previously supposed to be impossible.
Yeah.
We tried that in '82 and it didn't work then. I don't see why it's going to work now. Yeah.
Well, very, very, very good. Maybe we should go and do something impossible. So, thank you, Stephen.
Learning Dutch.
Learning Dutch. Yeah,
learning Finnish.
I don't know if the story is true that they have a hot potato in their mouth or something when they're speaking.
I don't know. Yeah.
But wonderful people, wonderful country, and I can really relate to this country as I come from Finland. There's some kind of similar things, but some things are different. Yeah. But thanks, Stephen. It has been a pleasure meeting you here. So after all these years.
No, thanks, Teemu. It is nice to see you at last.
Yeah.
Know that you really do exist.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
Bye, world.